Guys, I'm really sorry, but I must plug in. I'm running out of juice. One moment.
This is when we need some like instrumental music, elevator music. Oh.
April, can you refresh and rejoin from a browser? I think you've...
Oh no. Well, this is nice.
I'm back.
She's there.
Hello, welcome to another episode where the creative team at Radiant critique an e-commerce website to take a look and see what they think is good, bad and fixable. Hello Leanne, hello April, how are you?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Alright, thanks. 7 out of 10, as always. Right, today we're going to be looking at a Shopify store called Little Rick, which is a CBD drinks brand. So they are, it's not a brand that I'd heard of before, but same kind of thing as Trip, I think, that kind of CBD infused drinks. So we're going to have a look and yeah, just tell us what you think, see what you like and what you think could be improved.
I think the first thing we probably noticed when looking at the site was maybe the header navigation. I think what threw me as well was having home as part of the header as well, because I also checked and the logo does link back to the homepage, so duplication of content, I suppose.
It's a little bit redundant, really. Yeah. I think the drop down as well, we talked about if you hover on shop, it's a little bit uninspiring. Like to me, like mint and lime, raspberry coconut, it should be flavours that should really entice your user into kind of clicking on them. So having maybe like a visual element, like an image with, you know, the flavours in, just something quite visual to help really inspire your users and reel them in. At the minute, it's just like, standard.
Yeah. Makes sense, yeah, because I think throughout as well they use colour to represent the flavour. They could bring this into the navigation just to tie it in a little bit more.
I was going to say it's quite a vibrant site, isn't it? The overall feel of it is quite a fun, vibrant, colourful. So what do you think of that? Do you think that works for this brand?
I think it works for this brand. It's very... I think what they've done is really honed into their, like, how they want to be represented and their branding, like in comparison to Trip is quite... I mean, I don't want to compare them to Trip, but in terms of, like, product and what they're offering, it's the same. What I like that Little Rick have done is kind of really embraced quite quirky branding. Like, you should be able to look at this and know exactly who the brand is from their branding, whereas Trip sort of embodies, I guess, the element of the CBD drink, because it's supposed to, like, calm you, make you relax. Trip have really embraced that. Whereas I feel like Little Rick have kind of pushed boundaries in terms of branding and really make them stand out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I think the personality you can see shines through with this one.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. So what else are you picking out on the homepage then?
The little like rotating marquee there is quite small in comparison to like the assets around it. Like I can't even really read
the
those.
ticker tape thing.
Yeah. We call it a marquee, actually, Matthew. Not a ticker tape.
Get with it.
I'm not a designer. I didn't know that.
If you're going to be joining our crew, understand our lingo.
Yeah.
It's like I assume it's like the benefits or like the USPs, and it's just a little bit pointless, a bit small. That they should really like make it stand out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you're right, because I did notice as well they do have their USPs, their standard USPs above, and I think the two sort of they clash maybe a bit. I think you miss
a bit lost.
Yeah, and I think these are probably more important in terms of the product.
I agree. They could do something so nice with that, like they have with other elements. It's just really like pointless and lost. It's a shame. I digress there. We did previously discuss on the product cards.
Oh yeah, what do you think about those?
So first off, I love the secondary hover, mainly because it's consistent in terms of the imageries that's been used throughout. Mm-hmm. And I love how, sorry, how they use the background colour against the image.
Yes.
I think it always makes the product pop.
Is that, are you
But
allowed to say that in design now? I've heard that if a client ever asks you to make something pop, that's a no-go. Is that correct?
Yeah, if a client say, can you make the logo pop, or can you be a bit more
yeah,
specific?
I think if we see it, it's okay.
Double standards.
Of course.
She's a hypocrite, guys.
Don't judge.
I was just on the back of that. I agree with you with the background colour. It does make it pop. But I feel like the image size, like the ratio, a bit weird. Like, it's a 4:3 ratio, isn't it?
It's like a landscape instead of a square.
Instead of a square or portrait. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a little bit unconventional, and I feel like if it was square and you had more height, it gives that section a bit more prominence because it's taller. Does that make sense? Like, it just looks a bit.
But it has got a nice effect on it. There's a nice hover effect on it, isn't it, I think?
Yeah, there's like a little glow. See that little glow? That's
There's a
really
shimmer.
cool. Little shimmer.
A little shimmer.
Yeah.
Like the effect of the CBD when you drink it. Just gives you that little shimmer.
I will say though, I think just quickly as well, I don't know if they necessarily need the underline as well as the hover. I think you only need sort of one indicator.
Yeah, it's a bit of an overkill, isn't it? All right, well, let's move down. Oh, it's not a carousel, is it?
It's not, no, I was just checking.
Something that our MD actually mentioned, and we've noticed it as well, is the typography, the font. It's a bit hit and miss because in some sections of the website they actually use the body copy in regular, which is a lot more legible, particularly when you've got lots of characters closely placed together in like a smaller font. But in this instance, like that body copy, it's in semi-bold, it's too much. I think it's a little bit more accessible and easy to read if it was in regular. I think the font's fine, but I just think like the weight of it here is just, for body copy, is too much.
Yeah, I think you're right. You can see it in effect if I just scroll back up to the product cards. You can see where they've brought in that sort of regular body copy, which works. I think it helps the hierarchy of copy as well. You can sort of follow the flow better, and then once you scroll down, you sort of lose that a little bit where it seems that the copy's all sort of fighting for attention at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. You kind of lose what's important and what isn't if it's all kind of shouting at you.
Exactly.
And also, like those 3 circles above, the title, so 32 milligram CBD full spectrum, is the same size as the body. Actually, if you, like you said, giving it a hierarchy, separate it out into 2 different weights, or increase the size of that title, it would just flow a bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think as well with the size of the graphics as well used, I do like how they've brought the colour in to sort of represent different ones, but I think if they were like a little bit smaller as well, it just wouldn't take up too much real estate on the page.
That's quite a nice little graphic there.
I love all their graphics. They've really focused on the branding and continuing it throughout. I feel like that's a really nice touch. They've got really nice stats as well. I wonder whether some of these stats would be better used in a different design, because I perhaps would overlook this, but actually their stats are quite impressive.
Yeah, I think that the graphic maybe outshines the stats on this section.
Yeah, I've agreed. Again, here with the fonts and those logos below, like they've actually been seen in really like prominent brands like The Guardian, Daily Mail. I just feel like that's a bit too small. It's the same with that marquee above that.
Yeah, it's kind of like everything's in bold except for the things they really want to be shouting about.
And then look at that section below, like the effectiveness. Those are really great. That, so much nicer to read.
Yeah.
So much nicer. The only thing I would say is the bold font really embodies their branding. It's quite shouty, quite edgy, whereas the kind of the regular font they've got below is a little bit softer. So I understand why they've used the bold font, and I think it's appropriate to use, but just ensure that body copy is in regular.
Yeah. They could even bring that bold into these titles, sort of effectiveness, great taste, and then just keep the body copy, regular, like you said.
Yeah.
Oh, a little bit of a parallax.
One thing that we talked about as well is there's a lot of like inconsistency with styling. So for example, like those buttons have a radius around the corners, so they're a little bit softer on the edges. But then like text boxes are quite square. Other elements, if we scroll down, Leanne, like these pricing guides, I think it's okay if you have like consistent buttons and then everything else is perhaps square, but there's a lot of inconsistent, like the video further up on that section we were talking about, they've got the rounded edges there. It's just a little bit inconsistent with different components and elements. It'd be nice to see it all consistent with like one sort of styling.
As a non-designer, that's cropped up in a few of the episodes now. There's been a few websites we looked at where you've both clocked that some of the buttons are square and some have got the rounded edges. It just doesn't occur to me at all. So is that just kind of like a design thing, like a detail, or is that important? What for me? I mean, I just haven't.
It is
noticed
important. It's important from like for visual harmony, usability, branding. Like for example, obviously it's from an aesthetic point of view. Firstly, you know, having aesthetic consistency helps to ensure like a cohesive and polished design. It can help like prevent your website from looking cluttered or mismatched, but it also helps to enhance usability and intuition. Like users subconsciously recognize familiar UI patterns. So if some buttons have like sharp edges, for example, and others are rounded, it may cause confusion. Rounded corners often feel more inviting and clickable, which can help improve the user experience as well.
Okay, that's interesting. And can you just clarify the difference between UI and UX?
Yeah, so UX is all about how like a user feels when they're interacting with a product, and it's not just a website. So it focuses on usability, functionality, and like the overall journey of the user. Whereas UI is about how a product looks and how a user interacts with it visually. It includes like colors, typography, icons, buttons. So that's kind of like the main difference.
Yeah, there is an example as well, which I can probably show you. See if I can show you now, actually. This image here.
Oh yeah.
So this is quite a good example of sort of UI UX. So here we can see the design, so the UI side of things. So this again represents the intended design, the aesthetically pleasing, carefully laid out design. And then to the left we can see the UX, the user's experience. And this represents the user's real behavior, the most efficient way, and sort of a convenient route as the people would take. And again, this is just a great example of sort of design UI to UX. You can sort of see how the design is and then how it's actually used by users.
So is that an example of where the design hasn't taken into account how the user's going to behave because the user's gone elsewhere?
What this represents is how the user's experience hasn't been considered in the design of that path. If it had been considered, they would have realised that actually the more convenient route for the user would be on that mud track, and they should have designed it that way. So that's an example as to how the UI hasn't been informed by the UX.
I was just going to say this is a great example for maybe somebody who's not as familiar with design. I think it's quite a good way to represent that for someone who's maybe not so much as a visual person.
Cool.
So we're towards the bottom of the homepage now on Little Rick.
Yeah.
Anything else to point out? So we get to a review section there. It's quite nice, some UGC.
They've got loads of user-generated content. In terms of UX, things are good. I think it's the UI perspective and the interactivity of it. I mean, when you go to a PDP, you start to kind of see what you talked about before, Leanne, how users' content is like fighting for people's attention. Could we perhaps go to a PDP just to have a little look at that?
Before we do that, Leanne, were you going to say something about the review section or the user-generated content part?
I was just going to basically say that they have one and it's nice and visual and bold on the page. I like how you can see the products clearly in this section as well. It's not sort of hidden.
Does the product look real?
Do you think those are influencers or something, or affiliates? Because they seem to have their little mics.
Micro-influencers, probably.
Yeah, I think so. But again, it works.
Yeah.
I'll jump into a PDP. Raspberry lemonade. Oh,
Oh,
right.
Jesus.
So you
Um,
both recoiled from that. I don't.
Yeah.
Do you not? I don't mind. Is each
That's
product page
right.
kind of crazily coloured?
Yeah, the intention's really nice of what they've
Yeah.
done. The background page is supposed to mimic the colour, but the black. Okay, from an accessibility point of view, that black text against the pink is really hard to read. That would not pass a colour ratio checker, I would assume. It's very difficult to read, and
Yeah.
like even the small, when you like look at the variants, I can hardly read raspberry lemonade mix pack because of that pink background. It's really difficult, and there's just so much going on.
The product imagery also has a matching background. I think it's just a bit too much. I do like how they've incorporated the colour to represent the flavour, but I think they could do it on a smaller scale. And I think it would still have, smaller scale, still have the same effect.
Have you highlighted the text? You know, the 3 bullet points at the top.
I haven't, no, I was just about to bring that up. It's almost like
Well
they've
done, Matt.
such a good
Learning.
point to raise.
You're learning. The more you do of these, the more
Yeah.
you learn. You can join our team soon.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I was going to bring that
As
up.
a little junior.
Update your CV. Yeah, it's almost like they've had to highlight that section to make it readable.
Yeah, it's just poor. Oh, another thing as well. I always think like an add to cart button should be very prominent because it's your main point for like conversion. It just gets a little bit lost with like those white like variant selectors above. I feel like the add to cart should be in a different we always say like it should be in unique styling, so it should have its own styling to give it like the most amount of prominence.
I suppose the
Yeah.
difficulty, what's unusual here is when the whole product page is electric pink, then it's hard to make the add to cart button stand out on that, apart from just making it white.
Or black.
Yeah.
Black would stand out more because it
Yeah,
would
true.
differentiate between those two variants, the one-time purchase and subscribe. We've got
Yeah.
another example here as to where they're not using the consistent radius around the corners. So that's it. The number of cans are very square, whereas everything else is very rounded.
Yeah, again, I think this just comes to the hierarchy of content and the consistency with the components. I think if this was addressed and they sort of strip back maybe a little bit of that colour, I think it'll be quite a
Yeah.
strong product page.
Yeah.
I agree. I like the UGC below the add to cart button though. That's nice. Nice placement.
Yeah.
Although, have a look at that accordion. There, yeah.
This one.
Yeah, it's it is scrollable, but I think like it's quite jumpy, isn't it?
It is,
first
and again, we having that issue with the copy again, sort of being in that bold font rather than that regular font that we mentioned on the homepage.
But
They don't have zoom either, like a zoom effect, and on hover or click.
so the main image doesn't change.
You can click the different thumbnails, but you can't zoom. I think for the front of it, maybe not needed, but I suppose if you were that type of person who wants to read a bit more details in terms of the back of the can.
Yeah, you'd like to think that they would put all of that information on their page, wouldn't you? I mean, yeah, like they probably have the nutrition information in that accordion.
Yeah, they've got it.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
It's a lot, isn't it?
yeah.
It is.
Well, no, it's needed. I don't think they can actually sell a product without having all of that information, because what if somebody's got an allergic reaction to a specific ingredient? You have to display it. I think it's just the way they've displayed it with that font style.
Yeah, I agree that it's needed. I just think, again, hierarchy of the fonts.
And then what about when you add to cart, or how do you select? Do you just kind of so they've got a subscription option, and you select them.
You pick your number of cans.
One-time subscription, add to cart.
I like it. It works.
Yeah, they have a nice free shipping. Oh, they've got the payment icons, which I'm always rambling on about.
She's always harping on about
Lots
those
of payment icons.
bloody payment icons.
Always.
She's like a broken record.
Yep, every time.
Although saying that, that's me with like, consistent radius on your corners, guys.
Yeah.
So we're saying the cart works pretty well. Looks quite good. Is there anything else that you want to point out before we move on?
Probably the quantity selector.
Tell me about that.
So the quantity selector. So as you can see, as a whole, the content inside is sitting too far to the bottom, so it just comes across as like broken, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You can sort of see the plus, the minus, and then the number in the centre is just sitting a little bit lower than in the box than it should do.
Anything else that you'd like to say about the site as a whole? I think we've kind of agreed that the branding's nice, it's fun, vibrant, but there's just some redesign work required that you would recommend. Yeah.
Branding's really cool, and like they've done a really good job with it. But I just feel like some bits on the site feel like an afterthought. Like they've not considered it as much as their branding.
Yeah, I think if they can just address some of that sort of consistency in the components, and again just how they use the colour in presentation of the flavour, I think that would help as well.
Mm-hmm.
I was just having a quick look around the site. I noticed that they've got a blog area as well. If you can just have a look at
Let me find it. Blog.
I mean, it might be interesting because people want to research what CBD is, how it works, the legality, all the stuff around the industry. So it's good that they've got a whole bunch of information about it. I did notice though that it's not very recent. The last article they put up was about 2.5 years ago. So a bit of a recency issue there. I don't know. It kind of makes the site look a bit inactive maybe. I recommend perhaps getting some more articles up. Also would help from an SEO point of view, although having googled CBD drinks, they do perform pretty well in search. I think they were third when I googled them, after Trip and another brand called Good Rays, I think. So I'd not heard of Little Rick, but they're doing pretty well, I think, in terms of search.
And what's funny is we've just been going on about sort of their branding and how well they've used it throughout the site and how quite bold it is. But then when you come into the blog, there's nothing really there. We've got obviously the font, but there's no colour, there's no imagery. I mean, I know it's just a blog at the end of the day, and obviously we're there for the content and the information they need to provide. But it would be nice if it sort of just flowed through into this page as well.
If you click through to an article, is that designed any better, or is it
Pretty basic. I actually quite like it. I don't mind it.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Let me check another one.
Stunning.
that one's bold? Is the other one bold as well?
Oof, God, that is so difficult to read.
Yeah. Again, it just comes to the hierarchy of content and consistency in there.
Accessibility as well.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thank you both. Unless you have any other thoughts to sum up there.
We're all good.
Well, all right. Well, thank you both for your time. I thought that was a good review of a pretty decent looking site. If you're watching and you're a brand that would like to be critiqued by the team, please get in touch. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.